You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me,
Welcome
Bob,
to
it's
Inside
bully
the
in
Village.
alley.
Alongside Village Media's editor-in-chief, Michael Friscolanti, we call him Frisco. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Welcome back. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Scott.
We should mention a couple things we got to get in. First off, we have a brand new sponsor.
Yes, huge news, breaking news.
This is
at Inside the Village.
Yes, hashtag breaking news. Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. True North Mortgage, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash.
That's a big moment. You know, you listen to all the great podcasts are full of advertising, right? There's always a good couple sponsors on a great podcast. I feel like this is a big progression for us.
It starts with one.
Yes, yes.
All right, the election has come and gone. Any big surprises from your perspective?
No big surprises. I mean, I think we all saw the Ford majority coming. All the polls were saying that. Always surprising how quickly it happens. You know, we sat down, the polls closed, open the computer, and bingo, all the networks are calling the election for Ford, right? So there was not drama in that sense. There were obviously some tight ridings here and there. But, yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised. I don't think anybody can say they're surprised by the result.
It was so fast, I don't even think your pizza had arrived yet.
Oh, no, we
in the
were way
newsroom.
later. Way after that we got our pizza, which was disappointing in itself. But
It always is.
I wasn't in charge of the pizza.
All right, the first word to Frisco this week, and of course, the only story we want to talk about is a big welcome to Halton Hills today.
Yes, we're very proud of that, very excited. Halton Hills today, Monday, June 6th, was the launch date. A fantastic team we have in place. Melanie Hennessy's our new editor over there. Mansour Tanweer is one of our reporters there. Just a great team who know that community so well. So they're going to be covering Georgetown, Acton, and all the other regions of that town. And, you know, I have to say, like, people are really excited. Like, we're getting emails from people in the community, people at the city, businesses there, just excited to have a quality local news source. And I got to tell you, I was on their website this morning, and it's chock full of stuff.
Awesome.
There's so many great stories, and people are engaged, people are reading, and it's exactly the kind of community journalism we do. And it's right out of the gate, just sprinting.
Fantastic. A brand new website in the Village family, and of course, a brand new sponsor in True North Mortgage. We're all set to fire up another episode of Inside the Village, and we will do just that right after this.
From newsmakers to celebrities to other prominent guests, you'll find them all on Village Media's new interview series, Up Close and Personal. Join host Scott Sexsmith as he goes one-on-one with well-known Canadians to hear their story. Up Close and Personal. Look for it on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Welcome back to Inside the Village alongside Michael Friscolanti. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Frisco, your time at Maclean's, a lot of time actually spent covering the opioid crisis, and you've brought that knowledge and expertise with you here to Village. And sadly, it's still very much in the forefront.
Yeah, it's a lot of journalists over the last few years have spent a lot of time covering this crisis. I sadly have spent a lot of time speaking to relatives and loved ones who lost people to the toxic drug crisis. And the stats just get worse and worse. You know, 2020 was the worst year on record for toxic drug deaths in Canada. 2021 topped that, even worse than 2020. So we're seeing this trend go up and up, and people are still largely numb to it. And we saw last week on Parliament Hill, the NDP had a private member's bill, Bill C-216, which was supposed to bring forward a public health response, more of a public health response to the opioid crisis, which we've heard so many experts talk about. We need a harm reduction emphasis on this. We need to have a safe supply. We need to decriminalize this so that the criminal stigma is not there anymore.
Right.
And the bill did not pass. It was largely defeated. And we're going to talk today to a mother who lost her son, who made the trip from Barrie. She's been featured multiple times at barrietoday.com, and she made the trip up to Ottawa to speak to parliamentarians about this issue, and we're going to hear what she has to say.
We're pleased to be joined on the program now by Christine Nayler, a mom from Barrie. Christine, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Christine, your son Ryan overdosed at the age of 34 years in November of 2020. I'd like to start, if we can, today by having you tell us about Ryan. What kind of a person was he, and what happened?
So, Ryan was a born activist, really. From the earliest age I can remember him always wanting to question things and challenge things and make a difference in the world. And he kind of got me into being an activist too, because I came from a family where we didn't question things. You just accepted that that's just the way it is. But Ryan wasn't content with that. And so he asked a lot of tough questions, even as a little boy. And he got me thinking, like, I don't know why it's like that. And maybe we should try to do something about that, like poverty and homelessness and stuff like that. So that's how he was. He was brave, and he was intelligent, and very compassionate and kind-hearted, and I like to call him my little leprechaun. He had Irish eyes that sparkled and smiled, and he liked to play pranks on people and stuff like that. He was really super proud of his Irish heritage, so much so that he got a degree in Celtic studies, and to celebrate, he did a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Ireland with his sister to celebrate when he got his degree. He was highly educated, and he fought for human rights, animal rights. He was an ethical vegan, a musician, loved children. He never had any children of his own, but he was everybody's favorite uncle. Like, the kids just loved him because he treated kids as equals, and he was just so fun to be around. And
we appreciate that detail, Christine. Thank you so much. There's a lot of stigma, as you know, around this issue of addiction and about the opioid crisis. Can you talk about your son's issues with drugs, how he started using, what happened to him?
Yeah, sure. So Ryan got sick when he was living alone in Edmonton. So he went to Edmonton for his dream job. He had a master's degree in information and library science, and he got a job out there. And unfortunately, while he was living alone, that's when the first signs of his illness started to appear. Later, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with psychotic features, but he didn't know what was happening to him, and so he started self-medicating. At first, his drug of choice was alcohol, but later he switched to street drugs because the pharmaceutical medications didn't work for him. Unfortunately, the only one that actually did work for him physically, he had to be taken off of it because of the side effects. Like, worked for him mentally, and the physical side effects were that he had to be taken off that medication. And so he found other drugs that worked for him. I like to say they were his medication, but he was denied a safe supply. He was denied access to it. And so unfortunately, he is gone. We had an 8-year journey after Ryan, from when he first got sick to when he passed, with us fighting the stigma and trying to get him help for his mental illness. And because he was self-medicating, it didn't matter when we went to the hospital, and that's where we encountered the worst stigma, was from the medical professionals that are supposed to be trained and understand. They just dismissed him as an addict, or a drunk, and they wouldn't look past that. And I'm like, but he's using because something is wrong, and he's trying to cope with what's going on, and they just wouldn't listen. And I feel like he was failed at by all levels of government, at every part of the system that was supposed to help him.
And what the saddest part for me, Christine, is the story is so awful and yet so familiar, right? We're hearing this story, the same story, from so many families who've endured the same thing. And you talk about safe supply. I think that one of the problems people have is they hear the word overdose and they think, well, this person took too many drugs. But it's not that. It's the drugs are toxic. The street drugs are poisonous, right? And so it's just a matter of just getting a bad dose. And it's, if we had a safe supply, we would see so many lives saved. Can you speak to that, Christine?
For sure. And that's why, for me, I think that language is so important. I don't call it the opioid crisis. I don't call it the overdose crisis. I refer to it as the toxic drug crisis. And I say that my son died of a toxic drug poisoning because that's what it was. He was poisoned. He had no idea what he was getting. Ryan's drug of choice was crystal meth. He didn't use opioids. They scared him, and still he died, right? Because the whole drug supply now is contaminated, and people that use stimulants are just as much at risk of dying from overdose now as those that use opioids. So I think that's why it's so important that in order to address this crisis, we need safe supply, because without safe supply, people are going to continue to die. And we're losing 20 Canadians a day, and that's unacceptable.
And the numbers are shocking. I mean, if you look even the latest numbers from Ontario, there were the year that your son died in 2020 was at the time the worst year for toxic drug deaths. That's been since surpassed by 2021 statistics. 2,819 confirmed and probable opioid deaths in 2021, which is 15% higher than the 2,687 deaths in 2020. I worry, Christine, if we become numb to these numbers, we just hear them and say, oh, most people just turn the page.
Absolutely. And so that's why I continue to share Ryan's story, as hard as it is to keep reliving the trauma that we went through with trying to get Ryan help. I feel we have to humanize it, because people just hear it. They just hear numbers and they are numb to the numbers, but those are not numbers. Those are real people. Those were people's sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, uncles, like best friends, and their losses have a huge impact on families and communities. And so this is a public health emergency. If we were losing this amount of people to any other, issue, there would be action on all levels of government. There's not, because we value these lives less. We have a judgment and a stigma towards people that use drugs, and we think that they cause this themselves. It's their fault, and we don't care about them. But we need to care about them, because nobody is immune, and it could be your child, your grandchild, next.
Christine, you're recently back from a trip to Ottawa. Can you tell us what brought you there and how it went?
So what brought me to Ottawa was we wanted to be there when members of Parliament voted on a private member's bill, Bill C-216, which was the first bill introduced for a comprehensive nationwide health-based approach to address the toxic drug crisis. It included decriminalization. It included expungement of criminal records for people that previously have been charged with the drug possession, as well as a national health-based approach, which included safe supply, which included more funding for treatment and recovery and mental health supports. And unfortunately, we did not, despite our best efforts on advocating and endorsements from so many organizations across the country, respected organizations that are experts on this issue. The MPs voted 248 to 71 to not sending this bill to committee. And it was heartbreaking. It wasn't to vote this into law, which is what is so, for me, just inconscionable. It was to send the bill to committee, to the Standing Committee on Health, so that MPs could hear from experts, so that they could have a debate and they could ask questions and make amendments, and that they refused to even let it go that far. It says something about our government and how they feel about this issue.
248 to 71. Christine, did the results of that vote surprise you? Did you think the margin would be a little tighter?
Yeah, I think yes and no. I mean, I still have this just this hope that people are going to do the right thing and that people care. But from what we, encountered from the system and everybody that should have been there to help Brian, it didn't really surprise me that much. I was hoping for more, but I kind of expected that would be the outcome.
Let's get into the details of Bill C-216. The main issue was decriminalization, right? And I think people are having a hard time understanding this because British Columbia requested the federal government's permission to decriminalize small amounts of these drugs in their province, and the government allows that. So if I'm in British Columbia and a person is caught with a small amount of fentanyl or other drugs like that, they're not going to be charged. They're not going to have their drugs seized. And this was basically what the private members bill was asking, to give this same rights to people all over the country, right? That was the gist of that was the main point of this bill, correct?
That was a part of the bill. So that's the thing about Bill C-216. It was a comprehensive health-based approach. So safe supply was a huge part of it too. And that's the part that I think the government is not ready to touch. Mm-hmm. And the timing of the announcement with BC and the government granting them that exemption one day before the vote on the private members bill, to me, it was just the government playing politics with people's lives. They did that as a distraction so that when they voted no to this bill, that they could say, well, we're going to try it in BC and see how it works. But they're not trying the whole bill in BC. They're trying one part of it. And as Justin Trudeau has said himself, there is no silver bullet to addressing the toxic drug crisis. And that's why this bill put forward by NDP MP Gord Johns was so important, because it was a comprehensive health-based approach. So it wasn't just decriminalization without safe supply. It's great. It's going to prevent people from being criminalized for their drug use, but it's not going to save lives. It's not going to prevent those people from still, every time that they do use drugs, from the risk of dying of toxic drugs. So that was really important.
And you haven't minced words, Christine. Yesterday I read on your Twitter account that you said the federal government does have blood on their hands. Why do they?
Why do they? Because they refuse to even let this bill get to committee. What are they afraid of? They don't want this studied and to have debate on this in a national conversation. It's all about votes. They're afraid to lose votes. They're afraid to look like they're not being tough on crime and that. And so they're just putting people's lives at risk.
Why do you think, this is a difficult question, but I've asked a lot of people this, why do you think governments are so afraid to treat this as the public health crisis that it is, right? It seems so obvious to everybody who understands this issue that it needs to be treated that way. You talk about the concern about losing votes. Is it that just they're afraid that there are people out there that still think this is a crime issue?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. We moralize and we judge people that use drugs, and we need to stop doing that. It's like some drugs are socially acceptable, and it's almost like if you don't use them, there's something wrong with you, like alcohol or cannabis now is legal and it's accepted, and so we're judging which drugs people have a legal right to use and which ones we still say, if you use this drug, then there's something morally wrong with you and you're a criminal, and that needs to stop because it's killing people.
Christine, can you talk a bit about Ryan's Hope?
Yes. So my husband and I, as I said, Ryan was an activist. And so after Ryan passed, we wanted to start an organization to honor who Ryan was as a person and to support people that were struggling with similar issues. So we started Ryan's Hope, and our mission is to advocate for and support people living with mental illness, substance use issues, and experiencing homelessness, because those three issues are interconnected, and I don't feel you can really adequately address one without looking at them all and how they interconnect. So part of what we do is the advocacy piece, like, speaking out about failed policies and stuff like that, and sharing our lived experience, because we don't want to be doing charity work 5 years from now. And part of it is that we are fighting. We do frontline street outreach in our community, helping people that are struggling with these issues to keep them alive and give them the supports that they need that are lacking from our government and those organizations that are supposed to be supporting them.
What keeps you going, Christine? I mean, we keep seeing these numbers go higher. There must be, when you're having private conversations with other mothers and the car ride home from Ottawa, for example, the frustration must be so huge.
Yeah, so I always say my faith keeps me going. And Ryan, I feel like he is still with me, but in a different way now. His spirit is guiding us and the work that we do. And so whenever I feel like I can't go on, he somehow he gives me strength and he gives me a sign. And I have 8 grandkids. And so I am doing this in memory of Ryan, but I'm fighting for their future. Because their lives are at risk, like children experiment, they go to parties and, it's not like it was, 30 years ago where, kids could go to a party and experiment with drugs. every single time that someone uses drugs, it could be their last time. And so we have to, fight for our children's future, fight for our grandchildren's future. We're losing a whole generation of Canadians, and it's not okay, but our government thinks it's okay because they don't value those lives.
Christine, good luck in your continued fight in this crisis. Again, losing a son at 34 is unimaginable. But I know that you can take solace in knowing that those Irish eyes are smiling down on you. Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you so much.
Inside the Village will be back right after this.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read. It's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley.
Welcome back to Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. True North Mortgage. You'll get great advice and save a pile of cash. Michael Friscolanti and Scott Sexsmith, you're grinning ear to ear. You're still in awe that we're sponsored now.
It boggles my mind that someone's sponsoring it.
Well, let's see if they're still there 6 months from now. The Bradford bypass has certainly been around for more than 6 months, and with the recent results from the election, it could be that much closer to reality.
For sure. And I think if our readers have seen it, it was the Bradford bypass was the subject of our latest Big Read, a new feature we've launched here at Village Media. We came out just before the election. The Bradford bypass was a big election issue. Doug Ford pushing highways, pushing plans to ease congestion and help commuters out. And a lot of the other parties saying, no, this isn't the right idea. This is an environmental disaster waiting to happen. Ford won big, right? And it certainly makes it feel like the Bradford bypass is a foregone conclusion, that it's going to happen. Obviously, there are people who still think there's a fight to be had, and one of them is our guest today.
We're pleased to be joined by Bill Foster. Bill is the chairperson of the organization FROGS. That's Forbid Roads Over Green Spaces. Bill, welcome to Inside the Village, and I have to applaud the creativity in the acronym.
Thank you very much. It was actually my partner's son that came up with it.
Bill, maybe you can give us a bit of an indication of where the Bradford bypass is. And am I correct in assuming that it's almost going through your backyard? Maybe you can tell us what that looks like and paint a picture for us.
Okay. Well, I'm on 38 acres of property, and it's a rectangle in shape, so that the shortest side of the rectangle is on Yonge Street, and the largest side is going east and west. And the highway right-of-way borders my south property line.
So, Bill, how long have you been hearing that this Bradford bypass is a possibility? How long have you been in this fight?
The first we heard about it was in 1993 when the Ministry of Transportation had a public information center and shared with us a draft environmental assessment proposal. And the reason they use proposals is it's the way you start an environmental assessment. You put the proposal together, the Ministry of Environment then approves it with or without amendments. And once that's been approved, that's the basic game plan or design details for the environmental assessment study to be conducted.
So you're talking 30 years ago. Do you remember what went through your mind when you first heard this possibility they were going to build a highway in your yard?
Not specifically, other than what the hell?
I can imagine. Now, this has been an ongoing discussion now ever since then. It's kind of gone on again, off again, the talk of this highway. Did you form your organization after that, or had you already been doing some environmental work beforehand?
No, we formed the organization right after the first public information center that said they were planning on doing this, because we thought this is ludicrous, but we better get involved now. So we did.
So just so our listeners are up to speed, this was the subject of a big read that we do here at Village Media, a very in-depth article just before the election about the long-standing debate over the Bradford bypass. And it lays out in great detail sort of the pros and cons of what different people believe about this. For you, Bill, what's the biggest reason why they should not build this bypass?
I'm not sure that I have a reason to say that a bypass is not needed. I think a connection between highways 400 and 404 are most likely required. My reason for objecting to this is that when this study was done, it was not done following the requirements of the Act. The government only looked at a 4-lane freeway. That was the only solution they would consider, and that was, they were very clear that all other traffic requirements other than a 4-lane highway were local requirements and responsibilities, and their solution would not handle any of those problems. That was left up to the local governments to deal with. The local governments never dealt with it, counting on the Bradford bypass to solve their problems.
In a lot of ways, the provincial election was kind of a referendum on the Bradford bypass and other highways. I mean, Doug Ford very much so was campaigning on a promise to help ease congestion, to help commuters have shorter drives to and from work, and with the Bradford bypass being one of them. And he won a bigger majority than he won the last election. How deflating is that for you and the people who are fighting against this bypass? Do you feel like the fight is over now, that you have no chance?
Well, actually, I take some humor with this, if you will, because Doug Ford went so far as to say, well, now that I'm representing everyone, I'm going to listen to everyone. And the reality is 53.6% of those who did vote voted for parties that were either going to kill these highways outright or going to restudy them. So if he chooses to listen to the people, as he says he will, we'll wait and see, then he will, in fact, consider a restudy, which is what's needed, because this is the wrong solution in the wrong place. And when he listens to these people, he also should listen to the 8 local municipalities that went out of their way to pass detailed resolutions requesting or requiring further study, because they were very concerned that this highway would have serious impact on Lake Simcoe. And in fact, Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition has written a report saying that within 38 years, even if we don't build a highway, Lake Simcoe is going to be a saltwater lake.
Bill, are you still holding out hope that things will go your way, and what do next steps look like?
I will continue to hold out hope in the thought that someday maybe people will actually stand back, and rather than listening to the rhetoric and the political promises that are not necessarily accurate, they'll actually look at the facts and realize this thing is in the wrong place. It's going to be frightfully expensive, far more expensive than it would be had it been put south of Newmarket on solid ground and on clean ground. It's also going to create horrendous traffic chaos through Bradford, because now you've got a population that's going to be 4 times larger than was originally anticipated in the Bradford and East Gwillimbury areas, and no way to use local roads to address those problems if you're trying to cross the Holland River. The only road that will cross the Holland River now, other than the Queensville Side Road, is going to be the Bradford Bypass. So in rush hour, this is going to make the Don Valley Parkway look like a free ride, so to speak, because you're going to have all sorts of local traffic trying to get around the local areas, and I can talk about that later if you want. But you're also going to have highway traffic going through there. It's just that makes no sense.
You know, a lot of people, though, you speak to in the area, York region or in the Bradford area, a lot of people are in support of this, right? They're just tired of being stuck in traffic, especially downtown Bradford's like a parking lot in rush hour. What do those people say to you, and how do you respond when they say, "Come on, Bill, we need this. It's time to just move along"?
And my answer is, I fully agree that you do need a connection between the east and west of the Holland River. And that needs to be regional roads. We need one at Ravenshoe. Badly needed. That was decided 30 years ago. And then the government, because they wanted a 4-lane freeway, refused to look at that. But Ravenshoe's the first one that has to happen. Once that's done, so that you get rid of the out-of-the-way traffic that's going from Innisfil and Barrie over to Keswick and so on, a lot of the traffic that Bradford's now seeing will no longer exist through Bradford. If there still is traffic through Bradford after that, then where the Bradford bypass is planned to cross the west branch of the Holland River, that should instead be a regional road crossing. And as such, it will have far less impact on the environment because it's lower traffic speeds and lower traffic volumes, but it will also handle all of the traffic that Bradford will ultimately have it, after Ravenshoe has been done. So once those two things are done, Bradford residents will be very, very happy. They won't have the rush hour parking lot that they will with the Bradford bypass. And so my answer to them is, you deserve better than what they're telling you. And what they're telling you, quite frankly, is not what their own studies say. They clearly are saying to everyone, you need this because of the growth, you're going to have traffic problems. And yet when you look at their studies say this won't solve that problem.
It's very personal for you too. We talked about how this could be right through your property, and we've seen there's been at least 5 properties expropriated by the provincial government in preparation for the construction of this bypass. Have you heard from the Ministry of Transportation? Are you concerned they're going to knock on your door one day with some documents?
The only thing I've heard so far is they've come and done a well test. I would be quite surprised if they decide they want to expropriate my property. I think what they want to do instead is to build an elevated expressway right along the side of it so that they can say, we got them. Because it would not be pretty. It would not be pretty. But expropriating my property is something that wouldn't be cheap. And they really don't have any need for it.
Bill, with the recent Ford victory, what does that mean from the environmental side? And Frisco brings up a great point. It's a bit of a gut punch.
It's a huge gut punch, but it was a gut punch even before they got reelected. The things they've done so far are absolutely atrocious, and our grandkids are going to suffer from it. Ford and his developer friends will pocket some money and everything's going to be fine, but the result is we will not recognize the environment we live in, and it won't be even close to what we have now, and it will be atrocious. And he's doing it because he doesn't care.
It's definitely the feeling among climate change activists and environmentalists that it's a big blow. It's a big loss for them. We interviewed Mike Schreiner, the Green Party leader, and even he conceded that there are some things we won't be able to turn around. We've done so much damage that we won't be able to fix everything. It's about trying to find a path forward. And this government clearly, in a lot of people's eyes, doesn't have any real plans at all to deal with climate change over the next 4 years.
That's right. And my only hope, and it's a far-fetched hope, is that our federal government will step up to the wicket and do what's necessary, because Canada has obligations to the rest of the world and to its own population to do the right thing about climate change. And it's serious. This storm we had a couple of weeks ago is a prime example of just the start of what's going to happen. So someone's got to deal with it. And if Ford won't, because he's got his own little friends out there to deal with, then we need the feds to stand up and do what's right. And I hope they do.
Bill Foster, good luck with your fight. Bill, of course, the chairperson of Frogs Forbid Roads over Green Spaces. Bill, good luck. Thanks for doing this today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Well, it took them over 30 years to get to this point, Frisco, but something tells me that they won't be waiting that long to see this start to progress in terms of moving forward.
Yeah, you kind of feel, you have the sense now that the election was kind of the last chance for the people who opposed the bypass to get their way on this. And I feel like now that Ford has won, that this is going to go and we're going to see things happening pretty quick. Like we mentioned, they've already expropriated a number of properties. Things are underway. The contractor's been chosen. I feel like in 30 years, we're going to long forget that this debate ever happened.
Absolutely, we will. All right, that's a wrap on another episode of Inside the Village, brought to you by True North Mortgage. And we truly do want to welcome True North Mortgage to the Inside the Village family. It's great to have you. True North Mortgage, where you'll get great advice and save a pile of cash. And if you want to check out previous episodes of Inside the Village, you can certainly do so across the Village Media platform, insidethevillage.ca, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. For Frisco, Michael Friscolanti, Editor-in-Chief here at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.